All right, I have one more thing. Let me play this from Emma.
I also want to add the question of when individuals are being triggered. I'm saying this because myself, I often get triggered by things online. I personally sit back and ask myself why it is that I am triggered. It often is not because of the other person or what the other person is saying. It is usually either the other person, the way they choose to live their life, the things that they're saying. That is triggering something within myself that I need to look at and I need to sit in and I need to take responsibility for. It's just a thing that I am trying to implement again in my life. And if people take value from that, then that is great. All right, I want to take a final moment to say a huge thank you to Lance for letting me join into this conversation. I love what he's doing, the message he's sharing with his platform, and the content, the amazing quality content that he is creating on his page. If anyone wants to connect with me, you can connect with me on Instagram at The Curious One Podcast, or check out The Curious One Podcast on your favorite podcasting platform.
Before we talk about that, I want to say thank you, Emma, for taking the time to send over the video. She sent a lot. Like I asked her like a group of questions, and she sent me, answers, and she sent me more than she had to. And I had a really hard time picking what to play. And if you want to see Emma's complete video, then go check out. I'm posting her full interview along with some extra thoughts of me talking about it on Patreon. The link for the Patreon's in the show description. But let's talk about that. Getting triggered. People like to think that you owe them something if they're triggered by something you said, or when in a sense it's like, maybe they owe it to themselves to think about why they got triggered and is getting upset changing anything? Is it effective? What's effective communication when triggered within yourself and with the person that triggered you or whatever triggered you?
Well, it happens to all of us. I mean, Emma said it as well. I mean, she gets triggered. I've gotten triggered. I'm sure it happens to all of us. But how you end up responding and what your response is to that is all how you can best handle it. It's, I think you getting triggered probably stems from some type of trauma response from either childhood or a traumatic event that happened where one thing led to another and something bad happened, which is why you have that response. And it's important to acknowledge that maybe this is a different situation, or like, why is it making me feel that way? And am I triggered by the person or by what the person said? Or can I separate the two things? How can I, confront it? I think one of the biggest rules to that is don't take it personal, unless it was like obviously even if it was a direct insult, it's probably easier said than done. But I think these moments can really teach us a lot about ourselves and why we think and how to move past that.
Yeah. I think about that too, because I'm the type of person who can just hear something and then I go on a rant about it to like my wife and she'll be like, oh, here we go again. And like, I can just go and go and go. And I never think about it, but it's like something triggered me. You know what I mean? Because I kind of don't even like that word. I think it kind of makes me feel like weird to say like, oh, I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm triggered.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's it's just not, because I feel like people who typically say I'm triggered, I usually am annoyed by. So it's like, but on a technical sense, whenever I hear something and then I go on a long tangent about something, I obviously was triggered by something. You know what I mean? And that's kind of funny to think about. But yeah, I guess I get triggered all the time. And I think a lot of it has to deal with being triggered is expectations versus not matching expectations, not matching reality. You know, I think the world is a brutal place, and everyone kind of wants to put wrap things like a pretty bow around life and simplify life. But the fact is, life is very complicated. Life is brutal. There's terrible things that happen. People have terrible viewpoints. And it's good to be hopeful and it's good to be positive, but at the same time, you have to be grounded in reality that the world is a fucked up place. And I think that's sometimes just kind of remembering that you don't live in a bubble. Other people exist. You have to coexist within the world, and you're bound to run into people. You're bound to hear something. You're bound to read something that you don't agree with. There's no way around that. It's just that's just facts. That's reality. You're going to stumble upon something you don't agree with, or meet someone who you don't necessarily vibe with or agree with their ideologies and viewpoints. And it's how you react to that. I think it's what's going to make you proud in your reaction. What's going to, is screaming at someone going to make that person rethink their thoughts, or is screaming at someone going to make them even more secure and feel even more anti whatever it is you're screaming at them? You know what I mean? Because sometimes it's like when you tell people what to do, it has the opposite effect. It's like they go the opposite way, or you know what I mean? It's like you make the gap even further by even trying to get someone to change.
Yeah, there's a great quote by Viktor Frankl, who I think he survived through the Holocaust. He wrote Man's Search for Meaning. It's a pretty decent book. And he goes, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great quote. And we talked about freedom to think, freedom to choose, whatever. And it's if you want to tie it into RP, it's like you choose to use a cane. If you were really hypersensitive about not wanting people to see you and see you as someone who's visually impaired, then you might not use the cane, but by telling yourself, I don't care what people think. I need to use the cane because it's beneficial to me. Then you're free. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this is
so it's that's just my quick example. It's just you got to do what's best for you, and I think sometimes people forget that. Sometimes what's best for someone else is gonna go against the grain, but it makes sense to them because it's best for them. You know what I mean? It's people have different priorities too.
Yeah, and I know that very, very well. I mean, I struggled so hard to not use a cane ever, never, because I was just so ashamed or was just scared to let other people know that I had RP, that I was blind, whatever you want to call it. And, it took me a while to really say, actually, when I traveled to Amsterdam for the first time, I was walking around by myself at this film festival, and Amsterdam is full of all these metal poles that are waist high and bikes coming from everywhere. It's just okay, ego, let's take a back seat. Do I want to end up in a hospital getting run over by a bike, scooter, or like there's just so many obstacles. I just said, fuck this. Excuse my language. Nobody knows.
Yeah.
Nobody knows me here. Like, who's gonna judge me? And now, I use it. And recently, I bought a bigger cane, and I use it when I feel I need to use it. And, I just don't want to get hurt or trip over stuff anymore. And so, yeah, it was a big thing for me to have that radical self-acceptance. Say, okay, I'm going to use this now, and I just don't give it whatever crap that what people think about me anymore. Like, this is me.
Yeah.
It's just like, go into that.
Yeah, and that's freedom. You're free from, you're acting to your own true self. You know what I mean? It's like you think that's best for you, so you're doing it. And I think that's all we can ask for for people is just like, but yeah, I think, man, we covered.
Oh, yeah. So
this is a beast of an episode.
Yeah, it is. It was pretty long. This is a conversation we were dying to have, and I think it's an important one. I think you should have more of them. Yeah, there's another quote that kind of resonated with me. Like, when there's no enemy within, outside enemies can't hurt you.
Oh yeah, that's a great quote.
So
I think that's.
And I think it can sum up
True.
everything. If you're okay, if you're ultimately okay with yourself and what's going on inside you unconsciously and unconsciously, no matter any external thing can affect you or hurt you. And that takes a lot of work to get there. I'm not saying it's easy.
Yeah, it takes a lot of work. And again, if you're grounded in reality, you'll understand that while doing the work, people are going to say things, or you're going to hear things or see things that's going to work against you or try to. And you got to have your own path. You got to stay true. You got to do the work yourself. I sound like a walking like self-help book or something, but it's like, that's all it is. It's just like, if you're triggered by something, that going back to the whole point of it is like what Emma said is like, why are you triggered? And if you do the work to figure out why you're triggered, maybe the next time you encounter that same thing that triggered you, maybe you won't be as triggered. And eventually you won't even be triggered at all, because you're just like, yeah, well, I know how I feel about that. Like it doesn't affect me. Like, I'm never going to see that person again. Or like, it's not like that celebrity or politician is my family member who I see on a daily basis. So it's like, just kind of pick your battles too.
I was just saying, it's just know that where your thoughts might be coming from, or usually these triggered moments stem from the unconscious mind. And if you learn how to like understand your own unconscious mind through various modalities, you can remove these obstacles and essentially get out of your own way.